Millionaire recognizes a homeless woman on the street. It was his childhood love. Everyone laughed, but what he did changed their lives forever. Before clicking subscribe to learn more exciting stories like this and avoid 10 years of bad luck in love. The life of Alexander Morgan, a successful 35-year-old businessman, was proceeding with the monotony typical of someone who has achieved everything in life. His days were divided between endless meetings, business dinners, and lonely nights in his luxurious penthouse in the heart of the city. Despite his success, an inexplicable emptiness accompanied him, as if something fundamental was missing in his existence. One autumn afternoon, while walking distractedly through the park near his office, something caught his attention. Among the crowd of anonymous faces, he recognized a familiar figure. His heart skipped a beat when he saw a woman sitting on a bench, her gaze lost on the horizon. Despite her disheveled and tired appearance, Alexander recognized her instantly. It was Lucy Wells, his high school crush. With a mixture of curiosity and concern, Alexander slowly approached. "Lucy, is that you?" he asked with a trembling voice. The woman looked up, and for a moment, a flash of recognition shone in her tired eyes. "Alexander?" she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "It's been so long." As they exchanged glances, memories of their youth flooded Alexander's mind. Lucy had been the brightest girl in the class, always surrounded by friends and full of dreams. Seeing her now, with her face marked by hardship and worn clothes, caused him deep shock. "Lucy, what happened? How?" Alexander couldn't finish the question, overwhelmed by the situation. With a broken voice, Lucy began to tell her story. After her mother's death a few months ago, she had become entangled in a series of legal problems related to the inheritance. To her surprise, she discovered that the house where they lived, which she believed belonged to her mother, actually belonged to a distant relative. Without resources to pay for a lawyer and facing eviction, Lucy had ended up on the street. "I never imagined something like this could happen to me," Lucy confessed, with tears in her eyes. "I've been looking for work, but without a fixed address, it's almost impossible." Alexander listened attentively, feeling a mixture of compassion and guilt. How was it possible that someone as brilliant as Lucy had ended up in this situation? And why hadn't he, with all his resources, done anything to help people in similar circumstances? Driven by a feeling he couldn't quite understand, Alexander made a decision that would change the course of their lives. "Lucy, I can't leave you like this. I have an empty apartment nearby. Please let me offer it to you while you get back on your feet." Lucy looked at him with a mixture of surprise and distrust. "Alexander, I appreciate your offer, but I can't accept it. I don't want to be a burden to anyone." "You're not a burden, Lucy," Alexander insisted. "We're old friends, and friends help each other in difficult times. Please at least consider the offer." After a long conversation, Lucy finally accepted Alexander's proposal, albeit with some reluctance. As they walked towards the apartment, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about the twists of fate that had brought them together again. Upon arriving at the building, Alexander noticed Lucy's discomfort as they entered the luxurious lobby. "It's only temporary," he assured her, trying to calm her nerves. "Tomorrow we can talk more calmly and see how I can help you find a job." Once in the apartment, Lucy was left speechless at the view of the city spread out before her. "It's beautiful," she murmured, almost to herself. Alexander observed her in silence, feeling something awakening inside him. Seeing Lucy, despite the circumstances, reminded him of the vibrant young woman he had known years ago. At that moment, he promised himself to do everything possible to help her regain that light. "Rest, Lucy," he finally said. "Tomorrow will be a new day." As he said goodbye and closed the door behind him, Alexander couldn't imagine how this unexpected reunion was about to change his life forever. What began as an act of charity would become the catalyst for a profound transformation, not only for him and Lucy, but for many other people whose lives they would touch in the future. The days following the reunion were a whirlwind of emotions for Alexander and Lucy. Alexander, torn between his business routine and his desire to help his old friend, began to question his life's priorities. Lucy, for her part, struggled with mixed feelings. gratitude for the help received and shame for her current situation. One morning, while having breakfast together in the apartment, Lucy finally worked up the courage to share more details about her past. "After high school, I married young," she confessed, her gaze fixed on the coffee cup between her hands. "I thought he was the love of my life, but it turned out to be a mistake." Alexander listened attentively, feeling how each of Lucy's words awakened in him a mixture of compassion and a deeper feeling that he didn't yet dare to name. "My ex-husband was controlling." Lucy continued, "Little by little, he drove me away from my friends, my family. When I finally gathered the courage to leave him, I found myself alone and without resources. My mother was my only support for years." Lucy's voice broke at the mention of her mother. Alexander, moved by an impulse, took her hand to comfort her. The contact, though brief, sent an electric current through both of them. "I'm so sorry, Lucy," Alexander said sincerely. "It must have been very difficult." Lucy nodded, grateful for the understanding. "It was, but it made me stronger. Or at least that's what I thought until you lost your mother," Alexander completed softly. "Exactly," Lucy confirmed. "Her death was so sudden, and then, discovering that the house wasn't ours, everything crumbled so quickly." Alexander felt a pang of guilt. He, who had always had everything, had never stopped to think about how fragile life could be for others. "Lucy," he said, his voice filled with determination, "I promise you we'll do everything possible to resolve your situation. I have contacts in the legal world. Maybe we can review the case of the house." Lucy's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. "Would you really do that for me?" "Of course," Alexander responded without hesitation. "We're friends, aren't we?" That word, friends, resonated in the air between them, charged, with a meaning that went beyond its usual definition. Both felt that something was changing in their relationship, but neither dared to mention it. Days turned into weeks, and Alexander found himself increasingly involved in Lucy's life. He arranged meetings with lawyers, helped her update her resume, and accompanied her to job interviews. Every small progress in Lucy's situation felt like a personal victory for him. However, not everything was easy. At the office, Alexander's partners began to notice changes in his behavior. He arrived late to meetings, seemed distracted, and most alarmingly for them, started to question some of the company's business practices. "Alexander, what's going on with you?" asked Jack, his main partner, one afternoon after a particularly tense meeting with investors. "You seem different." Alexander hesitated for a moment before responding. "Maybe I am, Jack. I've been thinking a lot lately about the impact we have on the community. Don't you think we could be doing more?" Jack looked at him with a mixture of surprise and concern. "More? Alexander, we're one of the most successful companies in the country. We generate jobs, we pay taxes. What more do you want to do?" The question hung in the air, and Alexander realized he didn't have a clear answer, at least not yet. That night, while having dinner with Lucy in the apartment, he couldn't help but share his concerns. "Sometimes I feel like everything I've achieved doesn't make sense," he confessed. "I see your situation, that of so many other people, and I wonder if I'm really doing anything meaningful with my life." Lucy looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Alexander, you've been incredibly generous with me. Don't doubt your worth." "But is it enough?" he asked, more to himself than to her. "I feel like I could do more, much more." At that moment, something changed in Lucy's gaze. She leaned forward and with a voice full of emotion said, "Alexander, there's something I must confess to you." Alexander's heart skipped a beat. What could it be? Did she also feel that growing connection between them? "I'm listening," he said, trying to stay calm. Lucy took a deep breath before continuing, "When we were in high school, I was in love with you." The revelation fell like a bomb between them. Alexander was left speechless, processing the information. "I never told you because, well, you were the popular guy, the star athlete. I was just the class nerd," Lucy continued with a nervous laugh. "And now, after all this time, here we are." Alexander felt as if the world had stopped for a moment. All the confused feelings of the past few weeks suddenly made sense. "Lucy, But before he could say more, the doorbell of the apartment rang, interrupting the moment. It was the lawyer Alexander had hired to review Lucy's case. "I have news," the lawyer announced as soon as he entered, "and it's not good." The atmosphere in the room changed drastically. Lucy and Alexander exchanged worried glances, aware that what they were about to hear could change the course of their lives once again. The lawyer, a middle-aged man named Eric, sat down in front of Lucy and Alexander with a grave expression. "I've reviewed all the documents related to your mother's property, Lucy," he began. "The situation is more complicated than we thought." Lucy unconsciously squeezed Alexander's hand, seeking support. He responded with a gentle squeeze, silently conveying strength. "The relative claiming the property has a solid case," Eric continued. "Apparently, your grandfather stipulated in his will that the house would pass to this relative, if your mother, if she died without leaving direct heirs." "But I'm her daughter," Lucy protested, her voice trembling. "I'm her direct heir." Eric nodded empathetically. "I know, and that's where the problem lies. For some reason, there's no legal record of your existence as Mary Wells's daughter. It's as if I didn't exist," Lucy completed, feeling the world crumbling around her once again. Alexander, who had been listening in silence, intervened. "There must be some way to prove Lucy's filiation, birth certificates, school records, something." "We're working on that," Eric assured, "but it will take time, and meanwhile the eviction process continues. We have to be realistic. We might lose the house." A heavy silence fell over the room. Lucy, overwhelmed by the news, stood up and approached the window. Turning her back on the two men to hide her tears, Alexander observed her, feeling his heart shrink at Lucy's pain. At that moment, he made a decision that would change the course of their lives. "Eric," he said firmly, "I want you to do everything possible to win this case, no matter the cost. And in the meantime, I need you to start the paperwork to create a foundation." Both Eric and Lucy looked at him in surprise. "A foundation?" asked the lawyer. "Yes," Alexander confirmed, his voice filled with determination. "A foundation dedicated to helping homeless people and those in vulnerable situations. I want to do something meaningful, something that really impacts people's lives." Lucy turned to him, her eyes bright with emotion and surprise. "Alexander, are you sure? That's a huge decision." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he replied, holding Lucy's gaze. "Your story, Lucy, has opened my eyes. There are so many people out there who need help, and I have the resources to do something about it." Eric, recovering from the initial surprise, nodded in approval. "It's a noble gesture, Alexander. But I must warn you that it won't be easy. Creating and managing a foundation requires a lot of work and dedication." "I know," said Alexander, "and I'm willing to face the challenge, Lucy. Would you like to be part of this? Your experience would be invaluable." Lucy, still moved by Alexander's gesture, nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, it would be an honor to be able to help others who are going through situations similar to mine." With that decision, a series of events was set in motion that would transform not only the lives of Alexander and Lucy, but those of many other people. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Alexander divided his time between managing his company, creating the foundation, and searching for a solution to Lucy's case. For her part, Lucy immersed herself in research on social aid programs and began to outline ideas for the foundation. However, not everything was rosy. At Alexander's company, the news of his new project was met with skepticism and concern from his partners. "Alexander, have you gone crazy?" Jack spat during a tense meeting. "We're in the middle of crucial negotiations for the company's expansion, and you want to dedicate time and resources to a foundation." "It's not just a foundation, Jack," Alexander responded calmly. "It's an opportunity to make a real difference in society. Besides, think of the positive image this will give the company." "Image isn't everything," another partner, Robert, intervened. "Investors want to see results, not charity." Alexander felt frustration growing inside him. How could they be so blind to the suffering of others? "Social responsibility is as important as profits," he argued. In fact, I believe that in the long run this will benefit us all." The discussion went on for hours. Without reaching a clear agreement, Alexander left the meeting exhausted, but more determined than ever to move forward with his plans. That night, as he shared his concerns with Lucy over dinner, he felt how her presence comforted him. "Don't let them discourage you," she said, placing her hand on his. "What you're doing is important and valuable." Alexander looked at Lucy, feeling his heart race at her touch. "Thank you," he murmured. "I don't know what I'd do without your support." For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Their gazes met, and both felt the electricity of the moment. Slowly, almost without realizing it, they leaned towards each other, but just before their lips touched, Alexander's phone rang, breaking the spell. It was Eric, the lawyer. "Alexander," said the voice on the other end of the line, "we have a problem with Lucy's case. The relative claiming the house has accelerated the eviction process. We have less time than we thought." The news fell like a bucket of cold water on both of them. Lucy, seeing Alexander's expression, immediately knew something was wrong. "What's happening?" she asked. Fear reflected in her eyes. Alexander explained the situation to her, watching hope fade from Lucy's face. "Don't worry," he assured her, taking her hands in his. "We'll find a solution, I promise you." That night, while Lucy slept in the guest room, Alexander stayed awake, his mind working at full speed. He knew he had to act quickly, but he was also aware that any wrong move could cost him not only Lucy's case, but also his partner's support for the foundation. In the darkness of his study, Alexander made a risky decision. He dialed a number on his phone, hoping it wasn't too late for a call. "Hello?" answered a sleepy voice on the other end of the line. "Jack, it's me. Alexander, I need your help, and in return I'm willing to make a deal you won't be able to refuse." Alexander's words hung in the air, loaded with promises and dangers. What he was about to propose would change the course of everything, for better or for worse. The next morning dawned grey and rainy, as if the weather reflected the storm of emotions stirring inside Alexander. After a night of almost no sleep, he prepared to face the consequences of the decision he had made. Lucy found him in the kitchen, with an untouched cup of coffee between his hands and his gaze lost in the window. "Alexander," she called softly, worried about his somber expression. "Are you okay?" He turned to her, sketching a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning, Lucy. Yes, I'm thinking." Lucy approached, sitting across from him at the kitchen table. "It's about last night, isn't it? About Eric's call?" Alexander nodded slowly. "Partly, but there's something else." He paused, searching for the right words. "Last night, after you went to sleep, I made a decision. I called Jack." "Your partner?" Lucy asked, surprised. "Why?" "I offered him a deal," Alexander confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "My participation in the company's new expansion project in exchange for his unconditional support for the foundation and for your case." Lucy's eyes widened. "Alexander, no, you can't do that. It's your job, your life." "My job isn't everything, Lucy," he replied, gently taking her hand. "I've realized that there are more important things, more important people." Lucy's heart skipped a beat at those words and Alexander's touch. For a moment, silence settled between them, charged with unspoken emotions. "But," Alexander continued, breaking the spell, "there's a condition that Jack set, and that, well, it complicates things." "What condition?" Lucy asked, fearing the answer. Alexander took a deep breath before responding. "He wants me to marry his daughter, Vanessa." The news fell like a bomb between them. Lucy abruptly withdrew her hand, as if Alexander's touch suddenly burned her. "What?" she exclaimed, incredulous. "Alexander, that's insane." "I know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "But think about it, Lucy. With this marriage, we'd secure the future of the foundation, we could help so many people. And your case, we could resolve it, without problems." Lucy stood up from the table, unable to contain her agitation. "At what cost, Alexander? Your happiness. Mine." The last words escaped her lips before she could stop them. Alexander looked at her, surprised by the implication of her words. "Lucy, But before he could continue, the doorbell of the apartment rang. It was Eric, the lawyer, arriving to discuss the latest details of Lucy's case. The conversation with Eric was tense and full of bad news. The eviction process had accelerated even further, and options were rapidly running out. "I'm sorry, Lucy," Eric said with regret, "but unless a miracle happens, I'm afraid you'll lose the house in a matter of days." Lucy nodded silently, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Alexander, unable to bear seeing her suffer, made a decision at that moment. "Eric," he said firmly, "accept Jack's offer. Tell him I agree to all his conditions." "No!" Lucy exclaimed, turning to him. "Alexander, you can't do this. Not for me." But Alexander had already made his decision. "It's not just for you, Lucy. It's for everyone we can help through the foundation. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for a greater good." Eric, sensing the tension in the atmosphere, quickly excused himself, promising to return with more news soon. Once alone, Lucy and Alexander faced each other in a silence charged with emotions. "Why?" Lucy finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would you do something like that?" Alexander approached her, gently taking her hands in his. "Because I care about you, Lucy, more than I can express in words, and if this is the price I have to pay to ensure your well-being and that of others like you, I'll do it without hesitation." Lucy felt her heart torn between gratitude and pain. "But what about us? What was growing between us?" "I know," Alexander replied, his voice broken with emotion. "Believe me, I know, but sometimes love means doing the right thing even if it hurts." At that moment, without warning, Lucy stood on her tiptoes and softly kissed Alexander. It was a brief kiss loaded with everything they hadn't dared to say until now. "I love you," Lucy whispered as she pulled away, "and that's why I can't let you ruin your life for me." Before Alexander could react, Lucy quickly moved away, grabbed her purse and left the apartment, leaving him alone with the echo of her words and the taste of her kiss on his lips. Alexander stood motionless, feeling his world crumbling around him. He had made a decision thinking it was best for everyone, but now seeing Lucy walk away, he wondered if he hadn't made the biggest mistake of his life. Meanwhile, on the city streets, Lucy walked aimlessly, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. She knew that what she had done was right, that she couldn't allow Alexander to sacrifice his happiness for her, but that didn't make it hurt any less. At that moment, under the rain that was beginning to fall, both faced a crossroads. The decisions they would make next would not only affect their own lives, but those of many others. The fate of the foundation, Lucy's case, and the future of their relationship hung by a thread, waiting to see what turn this story of love and sacrifice would take. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and events for Alexander and Lucy. While Alexander immersed himself in preparations for his engagement to Vanessa, Jack's daughter, Lucy had disappeared without a trace. Every unanswered call, every unread message was a painful reminder of the decision they had made. One afternoon, while Alexander was reviewing the final details of the contract for the foundation in his office, he received an unexpected visit. It was Vanessa, his future fiancée. "Alexander," she said, entering without announcing herself, "I think we need to talk." He looked at her, surprised by her presence and serious tone. Vanessa was a beautiful and sophisticated woman, but at that moment, her face showed a determination that Alexander had never seen before. "Vanessa, what's going on?" he asked, offering her a seat. She shook her head, preferring to remain standing. "I've been thinking a lot about this arrangement," she began, "and I think we both know that this isn't right." Alexander felt, his heart racing. Did Vanessa know something about Lucy? "I don't understand," he said, trying to stay calm. "I thought you were okay with the marriage." Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. "Okay? Alexander, we both know this is my father's idea. He's always wanted to unite our families, our businesses, but I can't continue with this farce." "What do you mean?" Alexander asked, feeling a mixture of relief and confusion. "I'm in love with someone else," Vanessa confessed, her eyes shining with unshed tears. His name is Mark. He's the gardener at our summer house. Alexander was speechless for a moment, processing the information. Vanessa, I had no idea. Of course you didn't, she replied with a sad smile. My father made sure to keep it a secret. But I can't keep pretending, Alexander. I can't marry you knowing my heart belongs to another. At that moment, Alexander felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Vanessa, he said, taking her hands in his, I understand you perfectly. I'm in love with someone else too. Vanessa's eyes widened in surprise. Really? Who is she? Her name is Lucy, Alexander replied, feeling his heart race as he said her name. It's a long story, but she's the reason I want to create this foundation. Vanessa smiled. This time with genuine joy. Then what are we doing here, Alexander? We should be fighting for the people we love, not submitting to the wishes of others. Alexander nodded, feeling determination grow inside him. You're right, but what will happen with the foundation? With Lucy's case? We'll find another way, Vanessa assured. You can't build something good on a lie. If you really want to help people, it must be from honesty. At that moment, the office door burst open. It was Jack, Vanessa's father and Alexander's partner. His face was red with anger. What's going on here? He roared. Vanessa, what are you doing in Alexander's office? Dad, Vanessa began, her voice firm, despite the trembling in her hands. I can't go through with this. I won't marry Alexander. Jack looked at Alexander, fury burning in his eyes. What have you said to my daughter? Have you forgotten our deal? Alexander stood up, facing Jack. No, Jack, I haven't forgotten anything. But this deal, it's wrong. We can't base the future of the company and the foundation on a loveless marriage. Loveless? Jack spat. What does love have to do with business? This is for the good of everyone. No, Dad, Vanessa intervened. It's for your good, for your ambition. But it's enough. I love someone else and I won't give up that happiness for your plans. Jack was speechless for a moment, his face changing from anger to disbelief. You too, Vanessa. Who is he? That doesn't matter now, Alexander replied, protectively standing in front of Vanessa. What matters is that we've both made a decision. There will be no wedding. Jack looked at both of them, his breathing agitated. Fine, he finally said, his voice cold as ice. Then there's no deal. Forget about the foundation, Alexander, and you, Vanessa, consider yourself disinherited. With those words, Jack left the office, slamming the door with a bang that resonated throughout the building. Alexander and Vanessa looked at each other, a mixture of relief and concern on their faces. What will we do now? Vanessa asked. The right thing, Alexander replied with determination. I'm going to look for Lucy, and you should go to Mark. It's time for both of us to fight for what really matters. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Lucy was walking through the streets that were once her home. She had spent the last few days reflecting, trying to find a solution that didn't involve Alexander's sacrifice. Suddenly, a familiar voice pulled her from her thoughts. Lucy, is that you? She turned to find herself face to face with an older woman with grey hair and kind eyes. Mrs. Johnson, she asked, recognizing her former neighbor. Oh, Lucy, dear, what a joy to see you, exclaimed the woman, hugging her. I've been so worried since you left. Where have you been? Lucy, moved by her old neighbor's affection, felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. It's a long story, Mrs. Johnson. So many things have happened. The woman looked at her with concern. Come, dear, let's have a coffee, and you can tell me everything. As they walked towards Mrs. Johnson's house, Lucy couldn't help but feel a mixture of nostalgia and pain as she saw her old neighborhood. So many memories, so many stories. Once in Mrs. Johnson's cozy kitchen, with a cup of hot coffee between her hands, Lucy began to tell her story. She spoke of her mother's death, the problem with the house, how she had ended up on the street, and how Alexander had appeared in her life like a guardian angel. Mrs. Johnson listened, attentively, her eyes full of compassion. When Lucy finished her story, the woman remained silent for a moment as if processing all the information. Lucy, she finally said, her voice soft but firm, there's something you need to know. Something about your mother and the house. Lucy's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Mrs. Johnson slowly got up and went to an old secretaire in the corner of the room. From one of the drawers, she took out a yellowed envelope. "Your mother gave this to me before she died. She made me promise to give it to you if there were ever problems with the house." With trembling hands, Lucy took the envelope. Upon opening it, she found several documents and a handwritten letter from her mother. "Dear Lucy," she began to read aloud, her voice breaking with emotion. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you and that you've discovered the truth about the house. Forgive me for not telling you before, but I wanted to protect you." Her mother's words revealed a story of sacrifice and unconditional love. The house had actually always belonged to Lucy. Her mother had put it in her name years ago, but had kept the secret to protect her from an ambitious relative who had threatened to take it away. "The documents in this envelope," the letter continued, "prove that you are the rightful owner. Don't let anyone take away what is rightfully yours." Lucy looked up from the paper, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "All this time the house was mine." Mrs. Johnson nodded, taking Lucy's hands in hers. "Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. Dear, she did everything possible to secure your future." At that moment, Lucy's phone, which she had kept turned off for days, vibrated in her pocket. With trembling hands, she turned it on to find dozens of messages and missed calls from Alexander. The last message, sent just a few minutes ago, said, "Lucy, I love you. I won't marry Vanessa. Please tell me where you are. We need to talk." Lucy looked at Mrs. Johnson, a mixture of emotion and confusion on her face. I think I need to go see someone," she said, standing up. The woman smiled with understanding. "Go, dear, and remember, true love always finds its way." With her heart beating 1,000 times a minute and the documents firmly held in her hand, Lucy left the house, ready to face her future. The revelations of that day had changed everything, and now, more than ever, she knew she had to fight, not only for her home but also for the love she had found in the midst of adversity. The sun was beginning to set over the city when Lucy arrived at Alexander's office building. Her heart was pounding, a mixture of nervousness and anticipation running through her body. With the documents proving her ownership of the house firmly grasped in one hand and the phone with Alexander's last message in the other, she took a deep breath before entering. At the reception, a young woman looked at her curiously. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I need to see Alexander Morgan," Lucy replied, her voice firmer than she felt. "It's urgent." Before the receptionist could respond, the elevator doors opened and Alexander came out, his face showing signs of fatigue and worry. Upon seeing Lucy, he stopped in his tracks, his eyes opening with surprise and relief. "Lucy," he whispered, as if he couldn't believe she was really there. Without thinking twice, Lucy ran towards him, throwing herself into his arms. Alexander hugged her tightly, burying his face in her hair. "I'm sorry," they both murmured in unison. Provoking a nervous laugh between tears, Alexander pulled away slightly, taking Lucy's face in his hands. "I thought I had lost you," he said, his voice broken with emotion. "You'll never lose me," Lucy replied, smiling through her tears. "But we have a lot to talk about." Nodding, Alexander guided her to his office, aware of the curious glances from employees who had witnessed the scene. Once in the privacy of his office, Alexander closed the door and turned to Lucy. "First of all, I need you to know that I called off the engagement with Vanessa. I couldn't go through with that farce, not when my heart belongs to you." Lucy felt her heart skip a beat at those words. "Alexander, But before she could continue, the office door burst open. It was Jack, his face red with anger. "You!" he shouted, pointing at Lucy. "Are you the reason my daughter and Alexander have ruined all my plans?" Alexander protectively positioned himself in front of Lucy. "Jack, enough. This has nothing to do with her. It was our decision." "Our decision?" Jack spat. "Have you forgotten everything you've worked for? Everything we've built? And all for what? For a woman who doesn't even have a roof over her head?" Lucy, feeling anger growing inside her, stepped forward. "You're wrong, sir," she said, her voice firm. "I have more than you think." With trembling but determined hands, Lucy extended the documents she had received from Mrs. Johnson. "These papers prove that I am the rightful owner of the house that you and your lawyers have been trying to take away from me." Jack took the documents, his eyes quickly scanning the content. His face went from anger to disbelief in a matter of seconds. This is impossible," he muttered. "Not only is it possible," intervened a voice from the door. It was Eric, the lawyer, who had arrived just in time to witness the scene. "It's legal and binding. I've reviewed those documents, and they are completely authentic." Jack looked at Eric, then at Lucy, and finally at Alexander. Defeat began to show on his face. "All this time," Alexander said, his voice mixed with amazement and relief. "Lucy, why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I didn't know," she replied, tears of emotion forming in her eyes. "My mother kept it a secret to protect me. I only discovered it today, thanks to an old neighbor, Jack." Feeling his world crumbling around him, collapsed heavily into a chair. Everything has been in vain," he muttered. Alexander, seeing the opportunity to close this chapter once and for all, approached his partner. "Jack, this doesn't have to be the end. We can use this moment as a new beginning. For the company, for the foundation, for all of us." Lucy, inspired by Alexander's words, added, "Mr. Jack, I understand your frustration, but think about the good we could do together. The foundation doesn't have to be an unattainable dream." Jack looked up, his eyes meeting Lucy's. For the first time, he saw in her not a threat, but a strong and determined woman. I need time to think," he finally said. At that moment, Vanessa entered the office, her face showing concern. "Dad," she said softly, approaching Jack, "it's time we let go of the past and build a better future. Together." Jack looked at his daughter, then at Alexander and Lucy. The silence in the office was palpable, loaded with emotions and expectations. Finally, with a deep sigh, Jack stood up. "You're right, daughter," he said, his voice tired but with a touch of resignation. "I've spent so much time chasing success and power that I forgot what really matters." He turned to Alexander and Lucy. "I owe you both an apology. My behavior has been inexcusable." Alexander, surprised by this turn of events, nodded slowly. "Jack, I appreciate your honesty. I think we've all made mistakes, but now we have the opportunity to make amends." Lucy, moved by the situation, stepped forward. "Mr. Jack, I know we got off on the wrong foot, but what do you say we start over? The foundation could be a new beginning for all of us." Jack looked at her, a spark of interest shining in his eyes. "The foundation, do you really think it could work?" "I'm sure," Lucy affirmed with conviction. "With the company's resources and our commitment, we could make a real difference in many people's lives." Vanessa, encouraged by the positive turn of the conversation, added, "Dad, think about the legacy we could build, not just in business but in the community." Jack remained silent for a moment, weighing everyone's words. Finally, a small smile appeared on his face. "All right," he said. "Let's do it, but on one condition." Everyone held their breath, waiting to hear Jack's demand. "I want to be an active part of the foundation," he continued, "not just as an investor, but as a member of the board of directors. I want to help make a difference." Alexander and Lucy exchanged looks of surprise and joy. "Of course," Alexander replied, extending his hand to Jack. "It will be an honor to have you on board." As Jack and Alexander shook hands, sealing their new agreement, Lucy felt an enormous weight lift from her shoulders. Not only had she recovered her home, but she had also gained unexpected allies in her mission to help others. Eric, who had been observing the scene in silence, cleared his throat. "Well, it seems we have a lot of work ahead of us. I suggest we meet tomorrow to start drafting the foundation statutes and resolve the final legal details of Lucy's case." Everyone nodded in agreement. As Eric, Jack, and Vanessa left the office animatedly discussing the next steps, Alexander and Lucy were left alone. "I can't believe everything turned out like this," Lucy said. Still processing the events of the last few hours, Alexander pulled her close, wrapping her in a warm embrace. "I can believe it," he murmured against her hair. "From the moment I saw you again in that park, I knew my life would change forever." Lucy looked up, her eyes meeting Alexander's. "I love you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me, on us." "I love you more," Alexander replied, leaning in to kiss her softly. "And this is just the beginning of our story." As the sun set over the city, bathing the office in golden tones, Alexander and Lucy remained embraced, savoring the moment and dreaming of the future they would build together. But while this couple celebrated their reunion and the birth of a new project, in another part of the city, a shadowy figure was observing the office building from a distance. With an enigmatic smile, he pulled out a phone and dialed a number. "It's done," said the voice on the other end of the line. "The foundation will be set in motion." "Excellent," replied a female voice. "Keep an eye on them. Soon it will be time to put our plan into action." The call ended, leaving a sense of anticipation and danger in the air. Although Alexander and Lucy believed they had overcome all obstacles, they had no idea that a new threat loomed over them, waiting for the right moment to strike. The following months were a whirlwind of activity for Alexander and Lucy. The foundation, christened New Dawn, quickly took shape thanks to the joint effort of all involved. Jack, true to his word, became an active member of the board of directors, contributing his business experience and contacts to drive the project forward. One sunny afternoon, Alexander and Lucy were at the construction site of the foundation's first shelter. The building, a renovated old factory, would soon become a temporary home for homeless people, offering not only a place to sleep, but also training, programs, and psychological support. "It's incredible, isn't it?" Lucy said, intertwining her fingers with Alexander's as they watched workers come and go. "A few months ago, this was just a dream." Alexander pulled her close, softly kissing her temple. "You made it a reality, my love. Your passion and determination brought us here." Lucy smiled, remembering the long road they had traveled. The recovery of her house, now converted into the foundation's administrative headquarters, had been just the beginning. Since then, they had faced bureaucratic challenges, skepticism from some sectors of society, and even initial resistance from some neighbors in the area where the shelter was being built. But with each obstacle overcome, their love and commitment had grown stronger. Now just weeks away from the shelter's official inauguration, Lucy felt she was finally fulfilling her life's purpose. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked, noticing her thoughtful gaze. "My mother," Lucy replied, with a bittersweet smile. "I wish she could see all of this. I think she would be proud." Alexander hugged her tightly. "I'm sure she is, wherever she is, and not just of the foundation, but of the incredible woman you've become." As they shared this intimate moment, they didn't notice the presence of a woman observing them from a distance. Dressed in an elegant suit and dark sunglasses, the woman studied them with interest. "Excuse me," said a voice, startling them. It was Mark, Vanessa's boyfriend, who now worked as a volunteer coordinator at the foundation. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but a group of potential donors has just arrived. I think you should come and greet them." Alexander and Lucy nodded, preparing to step into their roles as foundation leaders. As they walked away with Mark, the mysterious woman took out her phone and dialed a familiar number. "I have them in sight," she reported. "The plan can proceed as agreed." "Perfect," replied the voice on the other end of the line. "Remember, we need concrete evidence before making our move. Keep observing and maintain a low profile." The woman hung up and, with one last look at the building under construction, walked away from the site, blending into the city crowd. Meanwhile, Alexander and Lucy were engaged in an animated conversation with a group of business people interested in supporting the foundation. Among them was Elena Vasquez, a renowned philanthropist in the city. "I must say I'm impressed," Elena commented, looking at the shelter's plans. "It's an ambitious project, but a necessary one. How do you plan to sustain it in the long term?" Lucy, feeling in her element, began to explain the sustainability plan they had developed. She spoke passionately about the training programs, alliances with local companies for job placement, and micro-enterprise projects they would promote. Alexander watched her with pride, marveling once again at her intelligence and charisma. However, he couldn't help but notice how one of the businessmen, a middle-aged man named George Mendez, was looking at Lucy with an interest that went beyond professional. When the meeting ended and the potential donors left, Alexander approached Lucy. "You were brilliant, as always," he said, kissing her cheek. Lucy smiled, but noticed a shadow of concern in Alexander's eyes. "Is something wrong?" she asked Alexander, hesitated for a moment before responding. "It's nothing, it's just that, did you notice how George Mendez was looking at you?" Lucy blinked, surprised. "George? No, I didn't notice. Why? What did you see?" "Maybe it's just my imagination," Alexander said, trying to downplay the matter. "It's just that he seemed very interested in you, and not precisely in your ideas for the foundation." Lucy took Alexander's face in her hands, looking him directly in the eyes. "Love, you know I only have eyes for you. George Mendez or any other man means nothing to me." Alexander nodded, feeling a bit embarrassed about his jealousy. I know. Forgive me. It's just that sometimes I can't believe how lucky I am to have you in my life." They kissed softly, reaffirming their love and mutual commitment. However, neither of them could imagine that this small incident would be the prelude to a series of events that would test their relationship and everything they had built together. That night, while Alexander and Lucy were having dinner in their apartment, discussing the day's events and future plans for the foundation, Lucy's phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" Lucy answered, curious. "Good evening. Am I speaking with Miss Lucy Wells?" asked a female voice on the other end of the line. "Yes, this is she. Who am I speaking with?" "My name is Isabella Morgan. I'm Alexander's sister." Lucy felt her heart skip a beat. In all these months, Alexander had never mentioned having a sister. She looked at Alexander, who was watching her curiously from across the table. I didn't know Alexander had a sister," Lucy said, noticing how Alexander's face paled upon hearing her words. "I'm not surprised," Isabella replied, with a touch of bitterness in her voice. "My dear brother has a habit of hiding important parts of his past, but I think it's time you knew the whole truth about the man you're with." Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you talking about?" "I propose we meet," Isabella continued. "There are many things you need to know, things that could change your perception not only of Alexander, but also of the foundation you're building." Before Lucy could respond, Isabella added, "Think about it. I'll send you a message with a place and time to meet. It's up to you to decide if you want to know the truth or continue living in an illusion." The call ended, leaving Lucy with a feeling of bewilderment and anxiety. Alexander, noticing her disturbed expression, approached her. "Lucy, what's wrong? Who was it?" Lucy looked at him, a mixture of confusion and pain in her eyes. It was your sister, Alexander Isabella." Alexander's face transformed, a mixture of shock and fear replacing his expression of curiosity. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Isabella is—" But before he could finish the sentence, the sound of breaking glass filled the apartment. A stone had come through the window, bringing with it a note tied with a red ribbon. Alexander, reacting instinctively, ran to Lucy, shielding her with his body. When they made sure there was no immediate danger, Alexander cautiously approached the stone and unrolled the note. His eyes widened in horror as he read its contents. "The past always catches up with us, dear brother. It's time everyone knew the truth about you and New Dawn TikTok. Time is running out." Lucy, observing the paleness on Alexander's face, felt fear taking over her. "Alexander, what's going on? Who is Isabella really? And what truth is it that I'm supposedly supposed to know?" Alexander looked at her, the weight of long-kept secrets visible in his eyes. "Lucy, there are things from my past that I never told you. Things I hoped to leave behind forever." As night fell over the city, the couple faced a crossroads. The secrets of Alexander's past threatened to come to light, endangering not only their relationship, but everything they had built together. The shadow of Isabella and her threats loomed over them like a dark cloud, promising a storm that could sweep away everything in its path. Lucy, her heart racing, sat down on the couch, her eyes fixed on Alexander. "I think it's time you told me the whole truth," she said with a trembling but firm voice. "Who is Isabella really? And what is this terrible thing from your past that she wants to reveal?" Alexander, feeling the weight of years of secrets on his shoulders, ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Finally, with a deep sigh, he sat down next to Lucy and began to speak. "Isabella was my twin sister," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "We grew up together, we were inseparable, but things changed when we turned 18. Lucy listened attentively, trying to process this new information. "What happened?" she asked softly. "Our parents died in a car accident," Alexander continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I was devastated, but Isabella, she changed completely. She became cold, distant. She started mixing with dangerous people, getting involved in shady businesses. I tried to help her, Lucy. God knows I tried, but she was determined to go down that path. One day, things got out of control. There was a robbery at a jewelry store, the police arrived, and there was a shootout." Alexander paused, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. Lucy, moved, took his hand, encouraging him to continue. "Isabella was injured. Seriously, I took her to the hospital, but the doctors said she wouldn't survive the night. I was devastated, Lucy. My sister, my other half, was dying, and there was nothing I could do. That night, as I kept vigil by her bed, Isabella made me promise something. She asked me to take her place in the group she was involved with. She said it was the only way to keep me safe, to prevent them from coming after me too. In her delirium, she believed she was protecting me." Lucy felt a chill run down her spine. "And did you do it?" she asked, fearing the answer. Alexander nodded slowly. "I did for a time. I became Isabella. I used her contacts, I got involved in her businesses, but soon I realized I couldn't continue down that path, so I took all the money I had, earned, and disappeared. I changed my name, my appearance, and started a new life. The money I used to start my company, it comes from that dark period of my life. I always promised myself I would use it to do good, to somehow make up for the harm I had caused." Lucy remained silent for a moment, processing all this information. "But Alexander, if Isabella was so seriously injured, how is it possible that she's now alive and threatening you?" Alexander shook his head, confusion evident on his face. "I don't know, Lucy. I swear I saw her die that night in the hospital. Or at least, that's what I believed. If somehow she survived, I can't imagine what she's been planning all these years." At that moment, Lucy's phone vibrated with a message. It was from Isabella. "Tomorrow 3 p.m. at the cafe in the Central Park. Come alone if you want to know the whole truth." Lucy showed the message to Alexander, whose eyes filled with fear. "You can't go," he said, taking Lucy's hands in his. "It's dangerous. We don't know what Isabella is capable of. But we need answers, Alexander," Lucy replied with determination. "If we don't face this now, it will always be hanging over us, threatening everything we've built." Alexander knew she was right, but the fear of losing her was overwhelming. "Then I'll go with you," he declared. Lucy shook her head. "You know that would only make things worse. I have to go alone, but I promise I'll be careful." That night, while Lucy slept uneasily, Alexander remained awake, tormented by the ghosts of his past and the fear of what the future might hold. How had Isabella survived? What did she really want? And most importantly, how could he protect Lucy and everything they had built together? The next morning, the atmosphere in the apartment was tense. Lucy was preparing for her meeting with Isabella, while Alexander struggled against the urge to stop her. "Please be careful," Alexander said, hugging her tightly before she left. "If you feel something isn't right, get out of there immediately. I'll be nearby in case you need me." Lucy nodded, kissing him softly. "Everything will be fine," she assured him, although inside, fear and uncertainty grew with each passing minute. As Lucy headed to the Central Park, a hooded figure observed her from a distance, following her every move. The confrontation that was about to occur would change the course of their lives forever, revealing truths that had remained hidden for years and testing the strength of their love and commitment to the foundation. The fate of New Dawn and the future of Alexander and Lucy hung by a thread, and only time would tell if their love would be strong enough to overcome the shadows of the past and the challenges that lay ahead. The Central Park was bustling with activity on that sunny afternoon, oblivious to the drama that was about to unfold in one of its corners. Lucy, her heart beating rapidly, headed to the cafe where she had agreed to meet Isabella. Each step she took seemed to bring her closer to a truth she feared to know, but which she knew was necessary for her: future with Alexander. Upon arriving at the cafe, her eyes scanned the place until they fell on a woman sitting at a secluded table. The resemblance to Alexander was undeniable. The same penetrating eyes, the same line of the jaw. But where Alexander radiated warmth, Isabella emanated a coldness that made Lucy shudder. "Lucy," Isabella said by way of greeting, indicating for her to sit down. "I'm glad you decided to come." Lucy took a seat, her eyes fixed on the woman in front of her. "Isabella," she replied cautiously, "I'm here now. What is this important thing you had to tell me?" Isabella smiled, but the gesture didn't reach her eyes. "I see Alexander has told you about me. I wonder how much he's really told you." "He told me enough," Lucy responded firmly. "I know about the accident with your parents, about your supposed death. What I don't understand is how you're here." "Now, and what it is you want?" Isabella let out a bitter laugh. "My supposed death? Oh dear, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Did Alexander tell you about the money? About how he built his empire on the ashes of our past?" Lucy felt her stomach churn. "He mentioned that the initial money came from questionable activities, but he's used that money to do good, to help others." "Do good?" Isabella spat. "That money was stained with blood, Lucy blood of innocent people who died because of our actions. Do you think building a foundation erases all of that?" Lucy remained firm, although inside she felt her world wavering. "People can change. Isabella Alexander has dedicated his life to making amends for his mistakes." Isabella looked at her intently, as if evaluating her. "You're strong, I'll give you that. I understand why my brother is so in love with you. But there's something you need to know, something Alexander will never tell you." At that moment, Isabella took an envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. "Open it," she ordered. With trembling hands, Lucy took the envelope and extracted its contents. They were photographs, documents, newspaper clippings. As she examined them, she felt the color drain from her face. This can't be true," she murmured. "But it is," Isabella confirmed. "Alexander didn't just get involved in shady businesses after my death. He was the mastermind behind everything from the beginning. The jewelry, store robbery, the shootout. It was all his idea." Lucy was shaking her head, unable to process what she was seeing and hearing. "Why are you showing me this? What do you really want, Isabella?" Isabella leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I want justice, Lucy. I want Alexander to pay for what he did, and I want you to help me achieve that." "Me?" Lucy asked, incredulous. "Why do you think I would help you destroy the man I love?" "Because if you don't," Isabella replied with a cold smile, "I'll make sure all this information reaches the authorities. The foundation, your reputation, everything you've built together will crumble, and Alexander will spend the rest of his life behind bars." Lucy felt panic overtaking her. "There must be another way," she said desperately. "Alexander has changed. He's helped so many people." "The choice is yours," Isabella interrupted, standing up. "You have 24 hours to decide. Either you help me expose Alexander, or I'll do it myself, regardless of the consequences." With those words, Isabella walked away, leaving Lucy alone with her turbulent thoughts and the incriminating evidence on the table. Meanwhile, Alexander, who had been observing the scene from a distance, struggled against the urge to intervene. He saw how Lucy gathered the documents with trembling hands and slowly rose from the table, her face a mask of shock and confusion. At that moment, Alexander knew the time had come to face his past once and for all. He couldn't allow Lucy to bear the weight of his mistakes. It was time for the truth, regardless of the consequences. That night, in the apartment they shared, Lucy and Alexander faced each other in a conversation that would change the course of their lives. "I know everything, Alexander," Lucy began, her voice broken with emotion. "Isabella showed me the evidence. How could you hide something like this from me?" Alexander, with the weight of years of guilt on his shoulders, collapsed onto the sofa. "Lucy, I never wanted things to come to this point. I thought that if I dedicated my life to doing good, I could somehow make up for the harm I had caused." "Make up for it?" Lucy exclaimed, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "Alexander, there are people who died because of your actions. How do you make up for something like that?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Alexander spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "You're right, there's no real way to make up for it. But Lucy, you have to believe me when I say that every day since then, I've lived with that remorse. Every life we've helped through the foundation, every person who has found hope, thanks to New Dawn, has been my way of trying to redeem myself." Lucy looked at him, seeing for the first time the depth of pain and guilt in his eyes. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she asked softly. "Because I was afraid," Alexander admitted. "Afraid of losing you, of losing everything we had built together. But now I see that fear has only made things worse." At that moment, Lucy's phone rang. It was a message from Isabella. "Time's up. What's your decision?" Lucy looked at Alexander, determination shining in her eyes, despite the tears. "It doesn't matter what you did in the past," she finally said. "What matters is who you are now and what you're doing to make amends for your mistakes. I won't let Isabella destroy everything we've worked for." Alexander looked at her, surprised and moved by her loyalty. "Lucy, I can't allow you to get involved in this. It's my battle, my responsibility." "No," Lucy replied firmly. "We're in this together, Alexander. For better or for worse, we'll face Isabella together." With that decision made, Alexander and Lucy began to plan their next move. They knew they were facing a difficult battle, but they were determined to protect not only their relationship, but also the legacy of New Dawn and all the lives they had touched through their work. The next morning, with a plan in mind, Alexander and Lucy headed to Jack's office. They needed allies, and they knew that honesty was the only way forward. "Jack," Alexander began, his voice trembling but firm, "there's something I need to tell you. Something about my past that could jeopardize everything we've built." Over the next hour, Alexander recounted the entire story. His turbulent youth, Isabella's supposed death, the illicit businesses, and how he had used that money to start his company and eventually the foundation. Jack listened in silence, his face going through a range of emotions: shock, disappointment, anger, and finally resigned understanding. "Alexander," he finally said, "I can't say I'm not deeply disappointed, but I also know the man you've become, the good you've done. The question is, what do we do now?" Lucy intervened, explaining Isabella's threat and her ultimatum. "We need your help, Jack," she concluded. "We can't allow Isabella to destroy everything we've accomplished with New Dawn." Jack stood up, walking to the window as he reflected. After what seemed like an eternity, he turned to them. "All right," he said, "I'll help you. But on one condition: we must be completely transparent. It's time for Alexander to face the consequences of his past actions, but we'll do it on our own terms." With Jack's help, they devised a bold plan. They would organize a press conference where Alexander would voluntarily reveal his past, explain how he had used that money to do good, and offer to fully cooperate with the authorities in any investigation they wanted to conduct. Meanwhile, Lucy would work with the Foundation's legal team to prepare a detailed report of all the lives they had positively impacted, demonstrating the real value of New Dawn to the community. The night before the press conference, Alexander received an unexpected call. It was Isabella. "Brother," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, "I've heard rumors about what you plan to do tomorrow." Alexander took a deep breath. "It's the right thing to do, Isabella. It's time I faced my past and took responsibility for my actions." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Isabella spoke. "I never thought you'd have the courage to do it. Maybe I misjudged you." "Isabella," Alexander said, feeling a hope he dared not name. It's not too late for us to reconcile, to heal. Another long silence. Perhaps, Isabella finally replied. I'll be at the press conference tomorrow. I guess we'll see how it all unfolds there. The morning of the press conference arrived with a mixture of tension and determination. Alexander, Lucy, and Jack prepared to face the media and the public. As Alexander adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, Lucy approached him, taking his hands in hers. Whatever happens today, she said, looking into his eyes, I'm proud of you. And I love you. Alexander kissed her softly, grateful for her unwavering strength and support. The conference room was packed when Alexander took the podium. Journalists, cameras, and an expectant crowd awaited him. Among the crowd, he saw Isabella, her face an indecipherable mask. Good morning, Alexander began, his voice firm despite his nerves. I've called you here today to make a confession and offer an explanation. Over the next hour, Alexander recounted his story. Omitting no painful detail, he spoke of his mistakes, his remorse, and how he had dedicated his life to trying to make amends for the harm he had caused. When he finished, a sepulchral silence fell over the room. It was Lucy who broke that silence, climbing onto the podium next to Alexander. What you've heard today is the story of a man who made terrible mistakes, she said, her voice clear and passionate. But it's also a story of redemption, of how that same man has worked tirelessly to do good. New Dawn is not just a foundation. It's a testimony that change is possible, that we can overcome our past and create a better future. As Lucy spoke, sharing stories of the lives they had transformed, the atmosphere in the room began to change. The initial hostility gave way to cautious understanding and then to reluctant admiration. When she finished, Jack joined them on the podium. As chairman of the board of New Dawn, he announced, I fully support Alexander and Lucy. We will cooperate completely with any investigation, but we will also continue our mission of helping those most in need. At that moment, to everyone's surprise, Isabella stood up from her seat and walked towards the podium. The silence in the room was palpable as she took the microphone. My name is Isabella Morgan, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I'm Alexander's sister, and for years I've harbored resentment for our shared past. But today I've seen my brother do something I never thought possible. He has faced his demons with courage and honesty. Isabella paused, looking directly at Alexander. I can't erase the past, but perhaps it's time for me to try to redeem myself too. If my brother is willing to accept me, I'd like to join New Dawn and work to do good, as he has done. Alexander, with tears in his eyes, extended his hand towards Isabella. She took it, and for the first time in years the siblings embraced, sealing a reconciliation that seemed impossible just hours before the press conference ended with a standing ovation. Although they knew the coming days would bring legal challenges and public scrutiny, Alexander and Lucy felt they had overcome the most difficult test. That night, as the city buzzed with news of Alexander's revelations, he and Lucy were on the terrace of their apartment, looking at the city lights. Do you think we did the right thing? Alexander asked, his arm around Lucy's shoulders. She nodded, leaning against him. We did. It won't be easy, but we'll face whatever comes together. And now, with Isabella on our side, I feel we can really make an even bigger difference. Alexander kissed her softly. I love you, Lucy. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. I love you too, she replied, looking into his eyes, and I'll always believe in you, in us, and in the future we'll build together. As the sun set on the horizon, Alexander and Lucy remained embraced, knowing that although the road ahead would be challenging, their love and commitment to doing good would guide them through any obstacle. Months later, New Dawn had not only survived the storm but had flourished Alexander's honesty, and Lucy's tireless work had inspired others to join their cause. Isabella, fulfilling her promise, had become an integral part of the foundation, contributing her expertise and dedication. On the day of the shelter's inauguration, Alexander and Lucy cut the ribbon together, surrounded by friends, family, and those whose lives they had touched, as the doors opened, welcoming a new group of people. In need of help and hope, Alexander looked at Lucy and knew that no matter what the future held, together they could overcome any challenge. And so, in a city that had once witnessed their struggles and losses, Alexander and Lucy found not only love, but also redemption and a greater purpose. Their story became a testimony that change is possible, that forgiveness can heal the deepest wounds, and that, with love and determination, even the darkest beginnings can lead to the brightest endings.